Ron, you can share your screen.
Hello, let me know if it's on.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for the organizer for inviting me to present here. This presentation maybe is a little different than the ones before, also in the sense that it's an ongoing project. It's work in progress, but we think it's important for people to be exposed for the potential of dating burials, especially in our region where, as we heard from others, it's not so easy to find suitable bones for dating. Okay, so when speaking about the intermediate Bronze Age, it's important to notice the big span, the time span that we have currently, according to all our datings so far, and it's getting more and more clear that since the 2500 BC until 2000, or even a little later, we have dates from intermediate Bronze Age. If we're talking about the burials, there is a big difference between the early Bronze 2 and 3, as we seen, David Ilan spoke about that there's not many documented burial sites. Main ones are Jericho and Babet Ra, and the others are usually single burials in single caves in various places. Once we come and look at the intermediate Bronze Age, there's suddenly burst in the number of tombs. Here I put on map, I think there are about 60 of them, but these are the major ones. There are a lot more. And this is something that we want to learn something about the culture. So we're looking for other means and further means to do it. If we are trying to talk about the main burial types of the IBA, so the most common ones are shaft tombs. There are two main types. One is communal burial that is usually in multiple chambers, like we see in type A here. B is the shaft tomb that is for a single burial. There are many, many of those, of course. And here, the chambers is usually a single one with a small 1 meter to 2 meter diameter. So these two, A and B types, construct well over 90% of IBA burials found so far. And some less common ones are cis tombs that we see here in number C, and dolmens or tumulus that are also in various places. There are some fields of them, but they're not very common. Okay, so when in our research we were looking, we saw the potential of doing radiocarbon chronology on burials from various reasons. The pottery typology of the IBA, though it's been progressing as we talk, and there are more and more work and understanding, and eventually it will be even a stronger relative chronology to work with. But currently, when you find a tomb, it's not enough to go and say, oh, it's a very early one, early IBA. And so most of them they look the same. The pottery is very common, and it's hard to tell by the pottery. On the other hand, skeletons from a single phase burial, like we find a lot, some of them articulated, it's a perfect context for absolute dating. And if we take it together with with what we find in the tomb, pottery and such, then we may help to increase the resolution of the relative chronology. Collagen extracted from bones is a proven valid way to source to radiocarbon dating. It's been done for decades. And some question that we thought we might answer is the burial topology, can it become a chronological marker? say one type is early and then they started another type of burial. So that's one option to check. When did it start? The tradition, did it start right away as the EB3 ended, or did it take a few decades or so until they started, or centuries? And communal burial that we find in the IBA, does it present a single point of time that they buried, they sealed it, and that's what we find, or maybe it's a prolonged action? And we have a lot of burial ground with single graves, but hundreds of them in one field. What does it say? Does it tell us that there is maybe a lot of years of accumulation, or maybe there was a big temporal site around it, they buried, and then they moved away in a very short period? So all of these questions we are looking at. But there are also a lot of challenges when you go and date, try to date from burials, from IBA burials. The material itself, the best for radiocarbon, the easiest, short-lived material like seeds and reeds, small reeds. So uncharred remains, either they disappeared or hardly collected. We don't have them from these burials. Charred remain, there is a chance, or we must see that they are in situ, because burial tend to fill up during time and water goes in, and you have to make sure that you find something, a charred remain, and it's really in situ and didn't go in later. And also, if it's wood, of course, you have the old wood effect, that it might indicate a time that is before the construction of this tomb. Bones and teeth, which is the subject of our work. In most excavated IBA burials in Israel, they are poorly preserved. We heard about it before. It's hard to find good quality bones that we can actually date. And also another issue is that they are usually not collected, especially not in the last few decades in Israel. So looking at all that, we developed a method in our research, and also before in the in the center here in the Kimmel Center in Weizmann, how to best date bones, especially from this area where not a lot of them are preserved well. We focused on clear IBA context burials, and we developed analytical procedure to get the best suitable samples in order to reduce the noise and the outliers from such dating. So I'm going fast over the procedure just to give you a sense of there's a lot of work involved. For each bone that we take, we sample, we analyze the mineral fraction for its preservation using IR spectrometry, and also splitting factor ratio calculations and other stuff. And we figure out the best ones to try and work. Then we go and check. We actually dissolve the mineral fraction with acid, and what we should have, it should leave us with the collagen, that is the other substance in bones, and that's the datable part. And we check the quality and to see if we have good quality collagen as a pre-screening. This is before we actually do the processing. And from that pre-screening, we are left with about 15% of the samples that we sampled. And we go further to the second step, which is the collagen processing itself. We do a collagen extract, which is a series of procedures involving chemistry and filtration, and we get the pure collagen at the end of that. We go through a series of checks to verify that the collagen is pristine and it's good for dating, which I'll see a little example later. It's also involved the infrared spectrometry, and percentage of carbon and carbon versus nitrogen ratio. All of these has to fit what we expect in collagen. From that, we actually, in our process, we got 72% success of what we extracted, and that one goes into dating in the AMS, in the DRIMS, radiocarbon laboratory here in the Weizmann Institute. And I want to show just for illustration, here we saw infrared spectrometry. So this spectrum in the middle is actually of collagen, of pure collagen, and of a standard. So this is a reference, and on top of it, you can see a bone that from our research that after dissolving the mineral fraction, we got the collagen, and we can see that the collagen is very much matching the spectrum of the pure collagen. So this one we actually dated, and it was successful. And to see the other side of it, which most bones resulted in not so good spectrum. Here we see the red one on the bottom. This is from another grave very close to the one that yielded good collagen. And you can see it's different, totally different. And it shows that this one is not a good candidate, and we did not proceed with that for dating. All in all, if we looked, we sampled 274 IBA bones, and we succeeded to date all the way through 26 of them. This is the assemblage that we dated. And now going into the results, to the sites we did, just mentioning, I failed to do it before, until now, there was not even one published tomb of IBA tomb that was, not even one dated tomb by radiocarbon from the IBA. And we actually succeeded to do it in a few. I'm showing here 4, there's more. Jabal Kakir here in the Hebron Hills. We have Yahud in the coastal plain. We have Kibbutz Azorea in the Jezreel Valley, and Sheikh Danon, which is a little north of Accra. So these are the 4 ones we will look at. I'm going fast now over the actual sites to show what happened. First of all, Jabal Kakir is a site that was excavated 50 years ago by Deaver. And over there, one thing that was done already, the human moles were studied and published by Patricia Smith. And she helped us in locating stored bones from, we looked at one specific tomb from there, which was sealed, and it had 9 individuals identified. So we know it's a multiple burial with at least 9 individuals. And here we see, this is the drawing of this tomb. And we succeeded in dating 5 different individuals. So we took bones that were identified as different people, and we succeeded to date 5. The next place I'm showing is Yehud. There are over 100 IBA shaft tombs excavated by Yehuda Gobrin. And most burials were of single person, a set of burial goods along each of them. It was in Chama soil, so the preservation was not good. We succeeded to date 14 tombs out of 52 sampled tombs. So that was our main burial site that we tried to date, and it was hard to get results here. The third one Hazorea, also it was excavated in the 60s, so it's almost 60 years now, by Meyerhoff as a Meyerhoff. And we located several boxes with stored from this tomb with bones. And actually, they even have their location of the bones marked. So we even know each bone, you can see here with the red, I marked the location of the two bones that was successfully dated. They were in the same tomb, tomb number 3, and but in different rooms. The last one we'll show is Sheikh Danon. That was a salvage excavation done by Zach Horvitz. 2 rectangular rooms. One we see, that's the big one in the front, and behind there was a small chamber and another room that you can see the opening to it. There were at least 10 individuals scattered around these rooms. We took a few of the long bones and we succeeded to date 3 of them. Okay, so saying that, we can jump into the actual dating. And the results, I'll put here the IBA timeline to make it easier for us to see the relation. And it is a small sample site relatively to the vast number of burials we have. But also in this small site, we already see that the sites are from different regions, and the date ranges of this random type of sampling, it goes throughout the IBA timeline. You see on the top from Sheikh Danon, we can see earlier burials that are either 25th or 24th century BC. Later, at the 23rd, there are a lot of burials, and 22nd also we can see here, and even 21st century and maybe further, but at least 21st century BC. So we have throughout the IBA, and we can, from this, what we can say from here until we have something for more evidence is that there is type of parallel chronology of the IBA settlements and the IBA burials. It didn't start in, it's not different, it's the same culture and with the same timelines. The IBA burial tradition seems to be a fundamental part of the IBA culture from its beginning until the end. And if we're looking at, checking my time, sorry. Okay, I still have time. If we're looking at the specific items, so the communal burial tradition can be seen in 2 of our locations. One is in Sheikh Danon on top. The second one is in Jebel Karkir on the bottom. So we can see on both of them that the burial and again, it's in the same room, the same chamber here and the same chamber down here. So in the same chamber, we can see burials that are apart by hundreds of years. In Sheikh Danon, at least 100 or more years apart. And in Jebel Karkir, it's even more outstanding. You can see it from at least the 23rd century BC all the way to the 21st and further. So here we have 200 to 300 years of burial within the same chamber. And as I told you, we actually made sure that these are different people. These are different individuals. And saying that, so we can try to, what we can learn from this, that there is 100 years of communal burial practice, same burial chamber, and this suggests a traditional tribe or family-oriented community with long-lasting burial tradition. What jumps to mind right away, and this we need to check, is there is a challenge here, because how can we explain this long term of one place with so long tradition? It's not even one site, but it's one chamber. It's people that recognize and know how to go back and go into the same place over and over again, and to explain the dichotomy between the local long-lasting burial practice and the actually ephemeral-looking villages in the vicinity of those burial grounds, if any. So this is something that we really have to put our minds to, looking forward. If we're looking at the type of burial that are single burials in a multiple burial or a site with hundreds of burials, mostly single, like we see here. This we have in Yahud. And if we look at it, we can also see here that there is a continuity. You can see a range, and this is again random, because some we could date, so others we couldn't. And from those we could date, you can see all through the actually dates goes from well within the 23rd century into well into the 22nd century. So there was like about at least 100 years of continuous burial in Yahud. And I put here the two pictures because actually each of them reflects different timeline. One is of the earlier burials, the second is from the later burials, and you can see how similar the way they did it was the same. They lay out the same way. The assemblage is very similar throughout this at least 100+ years. So we can see that there's a continuation. People were there and they knew the place and they kept on coming. Another angle I want to show, and this is a partial view of the central part of this cemetery. Here I marked in brown the tombs that we sampled, but we could not get sufficient material for dating. You can see it's the majority. But we did go all over what we could, and those didn't give us any signs to date. When we're looking, the green ones are the earlier burials in terms of radiocarbon results, and the yellow ones are later ones. And if we look at these two colors, we can see a tendency of green ones are at the west or right, and this is the west side of the cemetery, and the yellow ones are at the east side, which can suggest distribution and expansion and people knowing where they, like a planning of this cemetery, expanding it to the east when there was less and less place to bury. Okay, so to summarize, first of all, and this is important, I want to share with everybody that it's possible to date bones, even from that time and from this area. It does require high quality control and a lot of work, but it's worthwhile. And please take it into consideration when you see a potential or a potential place to do it. IBA burials, we do see, according to the data we have now, that it does seem to cover around the 500 years, like the settlement, and it's an integral part of the IBA culture. And we see long-term cultural memory preserved in the burial customs of the IBA. What we can talk and can see for the future, suggest anyway, is first of all, burial topologies. We weren't able to date any systems because there were none available at this time that we did the research. And same thing goes to dome, and we heard that they are very hard to find there any bones. But if in the future, if we'll find, we can then compare the dates between the various types and topologies of IBA burials and maybe get some conclusions, chronological conclusions. Another thing that we can certainly do is join the burial pottery assemblage with the absolute date of the same place and increase the relative chronology potential, and by that help to get better resolution for IBA finds. Okay, so by this I end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron. So we will use the 5 minutes that we still have for question if somebody have for a Ron lecture or for people that was before.
Yeah, I have a question for Ron.
Yes.
Hi, Ron. As you know, I'm a bit of familiar with the Yehud cemetery.
Yeah.
Some of the IB burials were the single burial was indeed the rule, but there were some burials that were double burials. So did you examine some of the twin burials, let's say, or the double burials?
We aim to. We took at least 2 or 3 of those, and we tried to take from different skeletons. But unfortunately, it was part of those 30 or 40 that we could not trace enough collagen or not good quality collagen, and we're not certain to date it. So we didn't go through with that. Hopefully, we can find it in other places.
How many burials you could had a good sample of collagen? 14
burials we dated, and out of around 52 or so that we sampled.
Okay. If I remember correctly, there were more than 200 burials there.
Yeah, but when we go and sample, we actually can see, we have experience enough to see by eyes when we look at something that is totally degraded and will give us nothing. Those we thought maybe can give us, still you see, most of them didn't. So it's not so easy.
Okay.
But we looked at what we could.
One last question. Did you sample MB burials also from this cemetery?
Yes, it was very important for us to try because they look similar in context and in the way they did the MB and the IB. We wanted to maybe to find some kind of a connection of a where is the barrier between them chronologically. Unfortunately, we had only one that gave us, and we tried all of those that we found. We did a lot of efforts to get MB alongside the IB to see the comparison. We got one result, and it was really further away, meaning there was like 200 years between them. It could not give us any really meaningful border between them.
Okay, thank you.
Itzik?
I would expect that the Yehud cemetery that probably reflect long duration will give a wider range of dates. It seems that most of the dates rely between the traditional 2300 to 2000 date. It's very interesting. Most or almost all of the dates go to the late intermediate bronze age.
Yes, when we're looking at that, some of them are, in the middle there, 2,300 and further. So, but yes, it doesn't reflect, this specific cemetery does reflect a duration of 400 or 500 years. But all in all, when we look at the full picture, we do see that most of the IBA timeline is covered by boreal datings.
That's interesting.
Okay, so we will continue now. I just want to announce that after Karen lecture, we will